The history of Kazakhstan in the 20th century has many painful memories caused by one of the cruelest political systems in history. This was the time of Stalinist repressions, a period of mass terror, forced collectivization and political persecution that changed the life of our nation forever. To understand the scale of what happened, we must look back. After the Bolsheviks consolidated power across Central Asia in the 1920s, Kazakhstan became part of the Soviet Union. Under Iosif Stalin's rule, the Soviet government launched a campaign of forced collectivization, compelling nomadic Kazakhs to abandon their traditional way of life and join collective farms, known as kolkhozы. The policy was not simply an economic reform, it was a cultural assault. The Kazakh people had lived as nomads for centuries, and their livestock was not just wealth, it was identity, survival and tradition. Confiscating their animals and forcing sedentarization destroyed the very foundation of Kazakh life. Between 1931 and 1933, Kazakhstan suffered a man-made famine called the Great Hunger. Historians estimate that 1.5 to 2.3 million Kazakhs died. That is almost 40% of the Kazakh population. Also, hundreds of thousands of people escaped to China, Mongolia and other Soviet republics. It was a huge demographic disaster for Kazakhstan.
The famine was not the only tragedy. At the same time as collectivization, Stalin's government began arresting and punishing large numbers of people. Among them were teachers, writers, leaders, and ordinary citizens. Anyone who was considered a threat to Soviet power. The years 1937 and 1938, known as the Great Terror, saw mass arrests across the Soviet Union. In Kazakhstan, the victims included prominent figures of the ALZHIR movement, Kazakh writers, poets, scientists, and educators. People like Ahmed Batursonov, Mazhan Jamabayev, and Mirza Abdulatov, founders of Kazakh intellectual life, were arrested, sentenced, and executed or sent to labor camps. Kazakhstan also became a land of exile. The Soviet government used its vast territory to establish some of the most notorious camps of the Gulag system. The most infamous was ALZHIR, the Akmolinsk camp for wives of traitors to the motherland, located near present-day Astana. Thousands of women whose only crime was being related to men labeled as enemies were imprisoned here in brutal conditions. Today, the ALZHIR Memorial Complex reminds us of all those who suffered. We visited the National Museum of Kazakhstan, where old photographs, personal items and documents are kept. These are not just museum objects. Behind each one is a real person whose life was destroyed by fear and terror.
The consequences of Stalin repression in Kazakhstan were very serious and long-lasting. Because of the famine, exile and deportations, Kazakhs became a minority in their own country. Koreans, Germans, Chechens, Poles, and many other people were forcibly brought to Kazakhstan against their will. Culturally, the repression destroyed an entire generation of Kazakh intellectuals, writers, scientists, and educators. Kazakhs and education suffered greatly for many decades. Historians still discuss the exact numbers and reasons. Some say it was Soviet ideology, others say it was deliberate to plan change the population. But one thing is clear, the repression were massive, targeted and cruel. Only in the late 1980s, during Glasnost, did people begin to speak openly about this. After independence in 1991, President Nazarbayev declared May 31st as a day of remembrance of victims of political repression, a day we still observe today. The Stalinist repression were not just history, they were a deep wound for our nation.